All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today. We have a number of people on the line, and there's still some folks joining, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're going to look at a framework for the revenue-generating functions of a company. So we kind of have a way to separate these functions from one another. It might mean that the functions themselves are separated, or it might just be sort of mentally an approach to take when thinking about revenue. And what we are going to do today is I'll spend really just a brief minute talking about our practice at Citrin Cooperman, just to give you guys a little bit of context for what we do. And then we're going to take approximately 20 minutes to go through this framework. We're going to try to keep this pretty snappy. We want everybody to be able to fit this neatly into their lunch break, so we're really going to shoot to be done by 1 o'clock. And hopefully there will be some questions. We want to get people thinking about things a little differently, ask some provocative questions, and hopefully we'll see some of those come in through the chat. So we're going to reserve some time at the end to address those. And away we go. So my name is Steve Ronan. I am the practice director for our strategy and business transformation offering. And what we really do in this practice is take a look at the strategies of a business. What are the ideas about how you want to run the business, where you want to compete, how you're going to grow, and what you ultimately are going to achieve. And then understanding how to put that into something that can really be put into action in real life, right? So taking those ideas, creating a plan, a tactical plan to execute it, and then helping change the business processes, the people aspect of businesses, and then underlying all of that is the technology of those businesses in order to achieve those strategic goals. So today, we're really looking at this framework as it's manifested in your primary revenue-generating functions. Which are more integrated than they used to be. They're there's collaboration that's required across these areas than they used to be, and they really all start on that strategic side of the business and go all the way down through the nitty-gritty, data points and day-to-day execution that happens in each of the functions that we're going to be talking about. So the framework that we're going to use is based on these 4 categories of revenue-generating functions. This is deliberately simplified, of course. It changes by industry a little bit, but for the most part, pretty much every company does some level of these 4 things. So you have your marketing, you have your sales, you have the fulfillment and service on those customers that sales brings in, and then you have how you develop products and services, how you come up with the ideas, and ultimately bring them to market to generate revenue. And there are trends that are happening across that entire cycle right now. Data and making decisions based on that data has become more important and more possible than it ever has been. Engaging with your customers in a more relationship-based sort of way rather than a transactional sales mindset. Which has implications across your entire revenue-generating organization. Automation and AI are continuing to grow really dramatically year over year. At the smaller business levels, this is still mostly on the automation side. There are now great tools out there to automate some of the administrative functions, and also actually now some of the elements of your strategy that have to get executed day-to-day can be automated. Larger companies are starting to play more with artificial intelligence and how they feed into sales and marketing. And overall, there's a trend towards much more collaboration across all of these functions. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of those specific collaboration points that we're seeing in the marketplace. So let's start with marketing, okay? Fundamentally, the goal of marketing is to go out, find new customers, and sometimes get them to buy things. So in a lot of the companies that we're talking about that are B2B, marketing's job is really exposure and making it easier for the sales force to sell things. When you're looking at B2C, that's where you, or commodity products, that's where you get into marketing doing more directly influencing a buy. So when we think of marketing, the way we always approach it is in these 4 buckets. You have your strategy, which is deciding where you want to compete and who you're going to go after from a customer standpoint. Branding and creative, deciding what the company stands for, what the product portfolio stands for, and then how that manifests in look and feel, plays into messaging. And look and feel isn't just logo and color sets anymore. It's also facilities. It's also industrial design and how products look. For service organizations, it might be the deliverables and things like, signage and status reports and project plans and all those sorts of things. How do you want to present your deliverables to your customers? Sales support is the part of marketing that's directly supporting the sales force, both internal and external. Brochures, sell sheets, photography, whatever the sales force feels they need in order to make their selling points easier and to make their close process faster and more effective is now coming more and more out of the marketing department. And then, of course, direct marketing, which is directly reaching potential buyers, in many cases setting them up to be fed into your sales organization so that they can sell to and close those customers. And then in some cases, actually making the sale themselves through advertising and kind of automating the lead gen to close process. When marketing's done well, this is where you can generate explosive growth for a company. Sales fundamentally is customer by customer. Marketing is where you can reach orders of magnitude above that. So marketing, you're looking more at home runs, and then the day-to-day sort of operations is more to support the fulfillment of goods and then your day-to-day sales activities. And you can use it to really drive the cost of customer acquisition down. In a lot of industries, the cost of acquisition is becoming more and more of a focus, all the way from your enterprise sales where you're selling very, very high value, high-priced goods, all the way down to your lower margin, direct-to-consumer commodity types of products. The cost of acquisition is a major driver of cost and therefore margin for most companies. And marketing is one of your most significant levers in reducing that. When marketing isn't done well, it makes the sales process very difficult. It creates confusion around the brand in the marketplace. It makes net new revenue difficult to get. And you're creating barriers that your sales force has to overcome on a day-to-day basis, and your customer service organization has to overcome on a day-to-day basis. So marketing is really important. The concept of digital plays into this space pretty dramatically, right? So digital, although it is technology-driven, some of the attributes of digital that you want to think about are it creates more velocity. You can move faster with digital techniques and methods. It's more quantitative because it throws a lot of data off that's subject to analysis and reporting and joining with other data in the within your ecosystem. Digital allows you to macro target and micro target much more effectively. So, political campaigns, you've really seen this micro targeting pop up where you can get down to, a voter level. In a business context, you can get down to a specific consumer or a very narrow subset of consumers. So that's a very powerful capability that digital brings to the marketing table that was really not available before. And overall, it drives down your total cost of acquisition. And it really should be considered across all 4 buckets of marketing. When you're thinking about your strategy, digital can help you innovate faster. It can help you achieve more aggressive goals. Branding, design, and creative, it affects because it needs to be mobile and responsive and really be able to take advantage of digital channels. It should help sales sell faster, and it should really increase the ability to control audience and cost in your direct marketing efforts. Now, when we talk about data, this is a really interesting evolution because finance really used to be the main provider of data in a business, and it still is. But the intersection of finance data and marketing data creates a really powerful decision-making engine for executives and for day-to-day managers. So whereas finance is really seeing, what's the output of all of your processes together, they can track revenue, and they can track revenue down to very detailed levels now with the systems that are available. They can track profitability much more accurately as long as your sort of cost allocation formulas are figured out and you've got good, automated rev rec rules and some sort of the basics of accounting. You can create profitability numbers at a very low detailed level. And when you can combine that with the how effective certain products are at generating engagement or services at generating engagement among customers, you can predict which customers are going to be most productive to go after. You can start to really hone down how you target industry segments or verticals, or all sorts of interesting sub-segments of the marketplace to be more effective with how you spend money developing products, creating marketing, and pushing advertising out to the marketplace. Okay, I guess my audio is cutting out a little bit, so I am going to cut the webcam off. You now know what I look like, so I think we'll be okay. And Steve can just let me know if we're still having issues and need to adjust this audio problem. All right. So the mindset around data is changing. Executives should now be looking at both finance and marketing to provide meaningful data that will drive decisions for the business. Moving over to the sales side, everybody fundamentally understands the selling part of this, right? The goal is to get prospects and customers to ultimately buy things, and hopefully buy things at a profitable level. So I won't spend too much time on the selling side. I think this is pretty well understood. Selling is selling, right? It's the way that selling has been done for a long time, but the tools are better, and you can enable it more effectively in a lot of ways using some of these other areas that we're talking about. When we talk to customers, the area of sales that most often needs more focus is sales operations. Especially as companies grow, sales operations becomes really a key driver of sales effectiveness, first off, and secondly, your ability to understand how well you're selling. So sales operations fundamentally designs and controls the sales process, right? So when you think of your funnel, how do you identify a prospect? How do you first touch that prospect? How do you follow up with them? And then how do you close? They define and manage that process. They're able to capture metrics throughout it so you can better understand what your velocity is, what your sell-through and close rates are, and what you're doing during sales that's driving success more than other things, right? And they're also really the focus of creating great customer data for your organization. When you have great customer data during the sales process, you'll have great customer data during the fulfillment process, during product development, and as you want to retain and grow that customer over time. It really all starts with sales operations. So when you hear something like, we need a customer relationship management system, what that's really getting at is a tool to implement sales operations. And a lot of times when a company says, oh, we need CRM, that oftentimes is true, but what it really means is you need to define what your sales process is, and how you're going to run a sales organization, right? CRM is the tool to use in order to define and drive the process and capture data on it. When sales is done well, obviously you grow revenue, top line grows, you capture net new clients, you reduce the cost of sales, you improve your close cycle. When it isn't done well, things start to become hard to control, and a lot of those things start to manifest in the financials. So the soft piece of this is it damages your brand, and it can damage marketplace and existing relationships. The financial piece of this is that your pricing and your product mix is often compromised, which has an impact on margins. And sort of the hidden cost of immature sales processes is it dramatically increases your cost of quality, because you get customers into your ecosystem that become hard for the company to delight, right? It makes it hard to make customers happy. So sales really needs to understand what your fulfillment mechanisms as a company are and understand what you do well in the field and how they're actually doing it, right? So, take a construction company. If sales is out there selling construction projects and they're selling a certain level of rigor and discipline and tool set that you use on site to manage the projects, and then when the customer sees, how a project plan is laid out, how status reports are put together and communicated, how you're doing your look aheads, how you're managing safety and all those sorts of things, and it doesn't match up to what the sales process was, you're going to have a real problem with delivery. And there might be, it's going to be harder to get change orders. There might be certain givebacks that are requested by the client, and it makes the day-to-day management of fulfilling the service difficult. When sales does a good job of matching their messaging and their pitches, and ultimately their close, to how that's delivered, it makes it much easier to meet expectations for the client. Okay, so having sales connected with what the marketing messages are and then how we actually deliver is really crucial. All right, next we have your fulfillment and customer service processes. Some companies still treat these as an operating cost, and I would really recommend framing customer service as a revenue generating function, right? The job of fulfillment and customer service is to delight customers. You want them to come back and buy more services, and you want them to tell their friends about it and their colleagues about it so that they come and buy services from you. So it really starts with meeting those customer expectations, fulfilling on time, having really great quality, having strong communication and regular communication with your customers throughout the process. We worked, for example, we worked last year with a big transportation company whose primary service were black car limousines. And they had a sales organization. It's really an enterprise sales, B2B sales environment for the most part. Uber kind of owns the B2C space, and now high-end black cars are going after companies and executives at a very narrow market. And even though they do enterprise sales in their sales organization, fundamentally the reason people keep coming back is because they like their drivers. So when the drivers, as soon as you get a customer into a car, that driver now takes over the sales process. And the rider is probably going to come back because they say, I want that driver again. So enterprise sales now turns into consumer sales. And the way that driver understands the marketing messaging of the company, they understand the expectations that were set during the sales process, and they know how to provide great service. That becomes your customer lifetime value mechanism, right? That's what gets them to keep coming back. That's what makes it easier to raise prices or to sell into their network. So fulfillment and customer service become a key revenue generating function after somebody's into your ecosystem. Those people are more likely to buy, they're more likely to tell people about you. And when it comes to digital, they're more likely to review you online, to forward your email marketing to their friends and do all those sorts of things. So when this is done well, you're more likely to get full profit realization. You won't have to give credits, you won't have as many returns, you'll be able to change order more. You create brand promoters and you increase your customer lifetime value. CLV used to be something that only like e-commerce digital companies used to use. CLV is a terrific metric for most companies now. It's a long-term metric. It gives you a good forward-looking goal to hit, and it creates this really great blended non-transactional goal for your sales and fulfillment staff, right? It's easier to sell to customers you already have, fundamentally. When this isn't done well, it makes new sales difficult because now you've created issues in the marketplace around your brand. It really increases cost of quality for really any company. And it creates a lot of pressure on your sales and marketing organization because they need to go find new customers more and more because you have a replacement cost of your existing customers that you're not retaining, and then they also have to generate new customer leads to grow. So this sort of really becomes the linchpin of all of anyone who has recurring revenue. This is the linchpin of your revenue generation. And anyone who's really got aggressive growth goals needs to be really, really good on the fulfillment and customer service side and understanding how it plays into sales. I'll spend the least amount of time on this. Product development and R&D. Very, very important, and it can't be done in a silo. Your product development organization is responsible for developing terrific products and services that customers want. And when you're thinking of what those ideas about those products and services are, really everybody needs a seat at that table. Marketing can tell you what people are interested in and what's going to drive a buying decision. Sales is going to be able to tell you what they're hearing from their prospects firsthand and what's going to make it easiest for them to sell and cross-sell. Service is going to tell you how easy that would be to deliver and be able to come up with plans for actual fulfillment of those and service of those products and services. And fundamentally, finance is going to be able to tell you if it's going to be profitable or not. Once that moves to engineering and design, the pool shrinks a little bit. You do some A/B testing for certain design ideas or engineering ideas, and you start to build what your sales process and what your fulfillment process is going to be for those products. And then once it comes to the time of release, everybody has to be really in sync here, because releases used to be, here's our product, we'll put it into the marketplace and people will buy it. Now we're going to put our beta product, our alpha product with a small group of customers, and we're going to take their feedback and improve the product. And then we're going to take the beta product and give it to our customers and take the feedback before we have a production ready product. That feedback process should be structured. It should consider all of these functions in it, because that's what is ultimately going to make you create profitable products and services that you can drive penetration into the marketplace with. So where do you start if you want to start to really reevaluate how you do all these things? Fundamentally, and I know I think Dick Albu and Rob Christ are on the phone. They have a great strategic planning practice out of Connecticut that does really rigorous strategic planning. So they would tell you the same thing. You need to decide how you want to grow and what the strategy of your company is going to be, right? Because once you start to talk about what customers you're going to go after, how you're tactically going to grow revenue with those customers, which feeds into how you fulfill and how you develop products, you need to make sure that that's going to line up with what you want to be as a company, right? And what your values are as a company. The strategy and the execution need to be very, very closely linked, especially with regard to your top line growth structures. From an organizational structural perspective, people need to be able to have accountability and ownership and empowerment for the results in all of these areas. So the people in sales need to the whole revenue cycle. And take baby steps. Look at the next 60 to 90 days and figure out what you can really accomplish. So these are 3 things that you can start addressing now. They're not something that you need to build a lot of complicated projects around or anything. These are things you can just start to sit down and think through. And this is what will set you up for success in transforming your whole cycle of revenue creation. From a success standpoint, the one piece of advice I always give to clients: don't boil the ocean, right? Limit your scope. Choose a few things to focus on at a time and break those projects into the smallest reasonable pieces. And then link those projects together over time to create that value. Using digital tools throughout the cycle is crucially important. You can manage what you can measure much easier than you can manage things you can't measure, fundamentally. So digital tools will help you manage that process, will help you collect the right data, and help you analyze that data. And finally, from a cultural perspective, this number 3 is often one of the hardest things to do, which is that you need to build a management culture that's tolerant of failure. Because a lot of the strategies that you put into place during this cycle are not going to work. And that's okay. You're going to have to test strategies out. I mean, that's what A/B testing is really kind of all about, right? So your marketing people need to feel empowered to take some big swings and have them not work out. As long as they know that if they recognize the failure and they learn to adjust and get feedback and iterate on that until you have a success, that's going to set you up to really hit those home runs. If you know, it's a long run process. If you swing and miss, and you don't get any results out of it, you need to, that's not the point that you kill the process. That's the point that you change the process. And over time, that yields, really, really tremendous results. So that was let's see, 26 minutes, not bad. Went a little over, but I would love to open it up for questions at this point. We have some great people on the line, and I'd love to hear some thoughts and ideas and questions. And Stephen, I think you're going to send those to me as they come in, right? Sure. So, what is the name of the firm that's the Pure Play Strategic Planning Practice? So, Albu Consulting is the name of them. We know them in the marketplace very, very well. Would be happy to introduce you, frankly, if you wanted to reach out to me. Okay. Oh, content. Okay, so the question about how does content play into this? So content generation, especially in the enterprise space, has become a really key enabler of both marketing and sales. So, again, going back to something like a construction company, brand will take you a long way in that marketplace, but ultimately differentiating yourself is done, and I have this in my practice too, is done on things like thoughtware and thought leadership. So creating content becomes a way to differentiate yourself. And that content, every time you release a blog entry or a video or a webinar like this, right, that plays into how you can get your branding and messaging into the marketplace and open the door to have interesting conversations with prospects. So marketing releases the content. Every content piece gives them several new touch points that they can create. It gives sales something to have conversations with people about out in the marketplace. It gives your service delivery people something that they can show that they're continuing to add value to existing relationships. And there's a process to it. So putting a content creation process in place and learning how to sequence it across all your channels is definitely key for a lot of companies now. Okay. All right, great questions. So we are at 1 o'clock. I'll give it 30 more seconds, see if anything else comes in. In the meantime, my phone number and my email address are up on the screen right now. Of course, you all have our website, and if you're on this webcast, you're also on our mailing list, so you're getting our monthly newsletters. But if you want to talk about anything that we discussed today, or even if it's a small question or getting into more detail on one of these areas, please feel free to reach out. Always available by email and often available by phone. So we'll welcome the opportunity to get into more of this with any of you and to talk about more how we can build value to a business. Is this scalable to any size business? Yes, conceptually. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a separate department for all of these areas. A lot of businesses will choose to, consolidate a lot of these functions to a small number of people or outsource it to vendors. But the concepts here are definitely scalable to any size business. I mean, you need a sales process. You need a marketing function that understands how to get your message into the marketplace. You should be considering sales, marketing, and service elements whenever you're creating a product or service, and ultimately delighting customers and engaging them is key to success for any company. So it is scalable. The bigger the business is, the more structure you need to put to it, the more discipline and definition you need for your business processes, and the more technology that you'll need in order to be able to support it all. But conceptually, all of these are scalable to any size business. All right. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you all available and on this call, and I hope to speak to some of you soon. Happy St. Patrick's Day and have a great weekend.